بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. السلام علیکم ناظرین. آج کل سپریم کورٹ میں پاکستان لاء کمیشن کے زیر اہتمام ایک 2 روزہ انٹرنیشنل جوڈیشل کانفرنس جاری ہے، جس کا گزشتہ روز آغاز ہوا تھا اور آج اس کا سیکنڈ ڈے. گزشتہ روز تمام سپریم کورٹ کے جو ججز ہیں انہوں نے جو جوڈیشل کمیشن نے ٹاپک دیے ہیں کانفرنس کے، اس کے حوالے سے اپنے اپنے خیالات کا اظہار کیا تھا اور تجاویز پیش کی تھی. اس میں چیف جسٹس آف پاکستان نے خاص طور پر اپنے جو پنجاب اسمبلی میں وزیر اعلیٰ کا الیکشن کا تنازع تھا اس کے فیصلے کو، اور جو قومی اسمبلی میں عمران خان کے خلاف تحریک عدم اعتماد کے حوالے سے مقدمے کی سماعت کا فیصلہ تھا، اس کو جسٹیفائی کرتے ہوئے انہیں ایک بہترین عدالتی نظائر قرار دیا. یہ انہوں نے ایک دفعہ پہلے بھی ایک تقریب میں ان فیصلوں کو کا تذکرہ کیا تھا اور انہیں درست قرار دیا تھا. ناقدین کا کہنا تو یہ ہے کہ جو فیصلے زبردست اور شاندار ہوتے ہیں وہ زبان زد عام ہوتے ہیں، انہیں ججز کو ایکسپلین نہیں کرنا پڑتا کہ وہ فیصلے اچھے اور درست ہیں. بہرحال چیف جسٹس یہ سمجھتے ہیں کہ ان کے یہ فیصلے بہترین نظائر تھے، وہ انہوں نے اس کو بیان کیا. اس سے قبل جسٹس عطر من اللہ صاحب نے خطاب کرتے ہوئے جو جوڈیشری میں تقسیم ہے اس
fundamental rights, the most significant of which is the right to life, Article 9, compulsory education for everyone, boys and girls, Article 25A, both came under attack in Pakistan. Another horrific statistic that I want to share with you, determined by the Global Terrorism Database from 1970 to the year 2019, was that there were 1,000 attacks on educational institutions in the country. The Supreme Court, a judgment I authored, delivered a judgment on the Sangota public school case. This was the only girls' school in Swat attended by 1,000 girl students, which was bombed and closed for 5 years. This is Civil Appeal 71P of 2014. You can check it up on the Supreme Court website. We are then faced with, we are negotiating with terrorists. Who does it? And what is offered? What do they do? What do you say? Please bomb 5 schools and not 6. Please take some money. Please give you some weapons. What is on the negotiating table? Where do these negotiations take place? Who authorizes them? The only negotiation which a true Muslim can have with a terrorist in the garb of Islam would be to present him with the Quran and Sunnah. What, after all, is the first commandment of Almighty Allah to us? It is Iqra, read. And this is the command form of the word. Those of you who know Arabic, Iqra is a command form. It's like stop, when on the road sign says stop, that sort of thing. So it is the first word. What does this 96th surah, which is actually the first surah, goes on to say? It talks about the kalam and ilm. And if we want to move to the example of the greatest human being, what did he do when he took prisoners at the Battle of Badr? He asked them, because Muslim community was mostly illiterate, teach 10 of them to read and write, secure your freedom. Then we have another horrific thing happening in Pakistan, which is called, I don't know why it's called honor killings, which is an abomination. There is a law in Pakistan which I categorize as a dead letter law because it is not implemented ever. And this is one of the few laws which derives directly from the Holy Quran, the text of the Holy Quran, and that is the offense of qasf. And I will now cite the Quranic verse. And those who launch a charge against chaste women and produce not 4 witnesses, flog them with 80 stripes, and reject forever their evidence. For such men are wicked transgressors. This, to allege, impute a character of a woman, requires a far greater standard of proof than is required for murder or a financial transaction. Here you require 4 adult witnesses. So can you imagine? There is no comparable crime in the world. Qazf is not an offense in what we generally categorize as the developed world or the Western world. And this is done over 1400 years ago. Qazf, the concept, is completely alien in the West. It's not civil, it's criminal. How many prosecutions of Qazf take place? I'm not aware of any. Then our faith, we are taught to respect women. It's not to be good-mannered, it is to abide by your faith. Islam is probably, I'm not a scholar of religions, but what a limited I know is the only faith where a woman, the footsteps threaded by a woman are followed by every Muslim at least once in his lifetime, if he or she can afford to go to Hajj. And that is Sa'i. The footsteps, or where the distressed mother of Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam, Bibi Hajar, walked and ran, and this we emulate her steps. She is not an isolatory example. There is the great lady Khadija bin Khuwailid, referred to as Ummul Mu'mineen, the mother of all Muslims, independent, a successful businesswoman, employed the Prophet and proposed to him. Can you imagine this happening today? And she was 15 years his senior. Think about it and reflect. She then, after her death, the Prophet married Hazrat Aisha bint Abu Bakr. Was she a lady who stayed at home? No. About 3,000 hadiths. She is the narrator of them. She taught in the mosque. She participated in battle. This is what our faith tells us about the great ladies. This doesn't stop there. Some scholars would come and quibble and say, these are the wives of the Prophet and different stress. No. Then Hazrat Umar, may the Almighty be pleased with him, appointed Shifa bint Abdullah as a market inspector in Medina. And I would probably end on the Islamic aspect by quoting Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi. Ignorant men dominate women. Non-discrimination is embedded in Islam. And who is the greatest, who is most honored by the faith? And I quote the Quranic verse from Al-Hujurat 49 chapter verse 13. Quote, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is the one who is the most righteous. Not man nor woman, no gender specificity there. And how did this country come into existence? It came into existence with Bi Amma, the mother of Maulana Shaukat Ali and Maulana Muhammad Ali, an equal companion on the select 21 member, or varied from 19 to 21 member of the Central Working Committee of the All India Muslim League. She was your freedom fighter for you. There was not the only exception, Jahara Shah Nawaz, who participated in the Round Table Conference in London long before Pakistan. There were other distinguished ladies as well, Fatima, Shamshun Nisar, Mahmood, Shaista Ikramullah, members of the All India Muslim League Council. Then we had the Women's National Guard. This is what the founder of the nation left us, which we have systematically taken apart. And then his sister, after his death, showed us the way to democracy. So, with these words, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you all, and I would most of all like to thank the very distinguished speakers who opened our eyes to many of the things we were not aware of. Please give them a resounding applause, please. Now I get to my other duty. Collected quite a few question and answers to save time. This is from Mr. Afzal, Senior Civil Judge from Balochistan. He's talking about, he wants to know about escalating threat of global warming or climatic changes, and what has the judiciary done about it. Does anyone want to answer that? I had mentioned the report authored by Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, and there are other instances. Would you like to respond? What has the role of the judiciary been in dealing with escalating threat of global warming or climate change?
Well, it depends on the litigants that will go to the court. The court can interpret the law, and it has given, I shared a few, and I shared only a handful of judgments which are groundbreaking. I think it has, as I use the word, enriched the Constitution to redefine the word environment. It has established the importance of protecting other species and biodiversity, and it has also given us judgments dealing with extreme events. I particularly want to mention a very small case, not very well known, a public interest litigation in Sindh after the heat wave, where Karachi Electric had shut down electricity in certain areas during the heat wave. And litigants went there that it denies our right to decent life. And then the court imposed on NEPRA's recommendation 10 million rupees to Karachi Electric Company. So in this way, the environmental rights are on the table for the judiciary. People are better educated who can give several instances, but I know that the Pakistani courts have been quite forward-looking. The weak area, as I mentioned earlier, is in our tribunals. They have not been very functional. No, it is on green benches. They have not been functional. Thank you.
Only in the judicial.
What's happening? I may be paraphrasing a few questions. One is probably addressed to Dr. Iram Sattar, if she is still there, how we should save our water or make best use of it. The questionnaire doesn't write his or her name. Dr. Iram Sattar, would you like to take that?
I can take it very briefly. I think one of the things is that there are two approaches. One is you try and increase supply. The other is try and I think we really need to start focusing on that. The one example that I would like to give is the nation of Netherlands, Holland. It is one of the biggest exporters of food products in the world. And given its land mass, a lot of which is underwater, the Dutch, as we know, are experts at holding back the water and living in peace with water. They have really made a kind of agriculture that is the future. Which means that on far less water supply, they actually have a massive production system and they export food. So one of the things that Pakistan really needs to start thinking about is turn the conversation all thinking all to maximize efficiency of existing supplies and then see where we go from there. We just need to pivot the conversation to maximization and utilization.
Thank you. There's a question for Dr. Bakhtiar Kadirov, and this is from Umeed Ali, an additional district and session judge from Balochistan. This question is how to persuade and convince common Pakistani people, people, that birth of a child in hands and control of couples, not to get married early, and what is the proper age to get married?
Thank you very much. First of all, regarding awareness raising, one of the recommendations of the Supreme Court's suo motu human rights case number 17599 is about engaging ulama and community influencers, one of the key recommendations. The second, also developing national narrative on the advocacy communication, developing behavior change communication and national narrative on population. The national narrative population is the first ever rights-based in line with the principles of the religion, the principles of Islam, tawazun, balance, tawazun between the rights, responsibilities, and balance. It's about, in Islam, it's clearly reflected, the rights of child are clearly reflected, their right to education, proper upbringing, nutrition, health, housing, shelter, clothing, all the rights are well reflected. Therefore, in line with the principles of the religion, first of all, parents are responsible for ensuring, securing proper education, upbringing, and housing and shelter. This is about the rights, the children's rights, and the rights of citizens to have access, universal access to family planning, reproductive health services, and the balance between the resources of the family, community, or individual household, the state resources for education, employment, and social services, and the natural resources, the balance. Therefore, it is unlike the previous number-based narrative of the 60s, which was Dubache Khushal Gharana, or the narrative of the later 1973, which is about Hamdu Hamaradu, which the people did not identify themselves.
Can you repeat the second one?
Hamdu Hamaradu. Two of us,
Hamdu,
ours too.
okay.
Us too, ours too. This was in 1972, Dubache Khushal Gharana in the 1966, 67, in the 60s, in the early 70s, Hamdu Hamaradu. But that one, the people did not identify themselves. Now it's rights-based in line with the principles of Islam about respecting and realizing the rights of children, and then also the responsibility of parents and state for children's education and well-being, shelter, and also striking a balance between the household resources and the state resources and natural resources. And I think this time the rights-based narrative should work. And also religious leaders, for example, they develop a kind of cookbook based on the national narrative, which will be also used during Friday sermons. This is about behavior change communication, and engagement of religious leaders and ulamas is very essential in this as well. Recently, there was a consultation on child marriage, and then religious ulamas, scholars visited an obstetric fistula center in Karachi, Goat Hospital, and then they witnessed one of the consequences of child marriage, which is obstetric fistula. So the health consequences of child marriage, and then they stated and called for a campaign to increase awareness of the population of child marriage, which will be a way of also addressing family planning issues, fertility issues, and population growth issues.
Thank you for that very comprehensive reply. And if I may add, it's really a thought. Before going on the prescribed Hajj, the once in a lifetime, it's only mandatory on you if you can afford it, and provided you can have left enough provisioning for your family for a period of 2 years. So one can take guidance from that as well. When you're planning a family, can you provide for that child for the next day, for the next month, let alone 2 years? Isn't that guidance? Then we have the example of the Prophet, the age he got married at. So these are various things which already exist. The next question is, I don't think I should answer this. It is by ex-Joint Secretary, Mr. Asif Ali Tamboli of the Islamabad High Court Bar Association. Do you think that the actual stakeholder is satisfied with the judicial system? I think I should pose this question to the audience. All those who think are satisfied, please raise their hands. We've got a F grade. So we secured a F there as well as in all the other bad horrific statistics. And this, I think, is related to a question by Dr. Ziaullah Ranja, who is an advocate of the Supreme Court. And it is, how can we transform our judiciary, enabling it to handle increasing number of cases of a rising population of Pakistan? I will respond by saying, Dr. Ziaullah Ranja, since you must have some thought about it, please write a paper on this. It's an excellent question, and send it to all the judges so we can learn from you. And if anybody else has any suggestions, they can also do so. So coming now to, this is another undisclosed person. To cope with global warming, we need more plantation everywhere. I think everyone will probably agree with that. Does anyone of the panelists want to comment upon that?
Unfortunately not. Trees alone will not solve the problem. There is sufficient carbon in the air that even if by a miracle we were to become a zero-emitting civilization, all countries, it cannot be reversed. Monsoon pattern has changed. Every successive years in our lives will be hotter than the previous year. And what we can say, the trees are important in many other ways to help us stabilize our land, protect topsoil. They are good carbon sink, and so on and so forth. But in terms of climate change, we will now need to think way too much more than just the trees. And we don't have sufficient land. Different ecosystems have different requirements. We cannot keep on planting trees. They'll be competing with us, human beings, and our other species. So there's a limit to this. We need to recognize that.
Oh, well, with profound respect, I disagree. As many as you can plant, do plant. When we reach that stage, when there are too many, then we can be told, stop planting. I've been told by the organizers that we don't have any time, and I can only take the last question. And this last question is from a gentleman by the name of Muhammad Iqbal, and it is directed towards me. Quote, a newly established law directorate at the GHQ is tasked to research and render legal advice on constitutional and international issues. Why can't we have coordination with them? Thank you. I did not know that the army has now undertaken this task. I, for one, am more than ready to render coordination and tell them how to operate tanks and artillery machines if they want, or if they want to or if they want to learn from what little one knows about the constitutional and international law issues, they're welcome to invite me or any one of us. Once again, you've been a remarkable audience, and I can't thank the speakers enough for their dedication and the time that they took out. And thank you very much. Do you want to make an announcement now?
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you, panelists. This was certainly a very marathon session, and however, addressing the biggest issues that face our nation: water, we talked about population, we talked about climate change, gender inequality, and we are facilitated by the fact that the Honorable Supreme Court has addressed these earlier as well. In an HRC case, I won't, for paucity of time, go into any detail, but there are Supreme Court judgments that talk about right to life and talk about various steps that can be taken to solve the water issue. I will only quote one line from a Supreme Court judgment that says, "The threat of overpopulation or population explosion is a doom the country is unknowingly moving towards if a national crusade for population control is not launched in time." So as far as this session is concerned, I will leave you with that. We will be now announcing a very quick lunch. And before we head out, it's very important to know that today we are thankfully blessed with 2 exits. And there's a left wing and a right wing. The ushers are going to facilitate everyone moving out sequentially. But of course, my Lord, the Senior Puisne Judge, and the judges, the Honorable Chief Justice and the Supreme Court judges first, will be moving towards the judges' block for lunch, and followed by the High Court judges and all the judges. So lunch is served, but everyone will move out sequentially, starting, of course, with the Honorable Judges. So we reconvene here in 30 minutes. 40 minutes at most. We will restart at 2 sharp, 2 p.m. sharp, we will restart. (2 p.m. we reconvene. Thank you very much.
है